Well, we can finally say the 2019-20 NHL season is over. It actually literally almost took a full calendar year for it to conclude from the beginning till the end, where we had the opening day and with the Stanley Cup awarded. But things happened, and the global pandemic had to find its way in. But I'm definitely glad that the NHL was able to find a way to salvage something and ultimately award the Stanley Cup. May I say is the most impressive championship trophy in sports. And speaking of the Stanley Cup, I definitely turned out to obviously watch it. And I would say the Tampa Bay Lightning winning the Stanley Cup this year, I'm going to say it was a little easier, just a little easier, to watch the Tampa Bay Lightning win the Stanley Cup this year than, let's say, 16 years ago. I think the reasons would be obvious why I say the Tampa Bay Lightning, watching them win the Stanley Cup, was a lot easier this time around than 16 years ago, because sadly, came against these guys. And definitely how that series played out made it a little painful. Also the fact that a couple players on the 2004 Tampa Bay Lightning, you could kind of say had a Calgary Flames connection. Well, we had Martin St. Louis, and we just let him go away. I know that at the time it was general manager Al Coates that still liked him and believed him, but then when we changed the Craig Button, he was essentially cut loose, and then basically he settled for anywhere, and Tampa Bay picked him up, and the rest was history. And I'm going to say he carved himself a Hall of Fame career and has his number 26 retired by the Tampa Bay Lightning. And also the fact that Brad Richards, the guy who ultimately won the first Conn Smythe for the Tampa Bay Lightning, he sort of had a Calgary Flames connection, because I made a video where I talked about the time when we traded Sam McCarthy to the Tampa Bay Lightning for Jason Weimer, and we just tossed in a couple draft picks. Yeah, one of those draft picks was used on Brad Richards. So that's another reason why I'd say it was a lot more painful to watch Tampa Bay win the Stanley Cup 16 years ago than now. But I mean, this year, it was Tampa Bay and Dallas. As a Flames fan, you almost got to wonder, who did you ultimately want to see win the Stanley Cup? A team that beat you in the first round, that ultimately made the run, or the team that beat you 16 years ago in a very tough, draining Stanley Cup final then, where you could say we did score that goal in Game 6 that Jelly scored that wasn't reviewed, despite what they say it was reviewed. It was a split second, but I thought the rule is that the puck crosses the line, the entire puck counts as a goal, and it's all hypothetical. So it was late. It was in the second half of the third period, about 8 minutes to go, when that play happened. And the way Calgary was playing defensively, that if Calgary would have made up 3-2, being at home in the Sea of Red, they were thinking that we would have held on and won the Stanley Cup. However, we still ultimately didn't pull up the deal. Lost double overtime where Martin St. Louis had to, score that winner. But with the Tampa Bay Lightning this year, it was actually all right to see them win the Stanley Cup, because there's definitely a franchise that after when they won that Stanley Cup in 2004, at the expense of the Flames, they had their big three. Well, two of the big three I already mentioned, with Brad Richards, Martin St. Louis, and then Vincent Lecavalier, a player that they drafted in the first round overall in 1998. They had that, and then they had Dan Boyle on defense, and Nikolai Habibulin in net, which definitely was their pieces, and then Ruslan Fatenko, obviously another player that definitely stepped up in Game 7, and those role players that always have. And Chris Dingman was also on that team, another former Calgary Flame. But the Tampa Bay Lightning, definitely fell off a bit, where they lost a couple of key pieces on their back end and they had to rebuild. So it was nice to see Steven Stamkos, despite the fact that some are critical in the fact, he only played 3 minutes. Well, he made those 3 minutes counted when he did play. And even if the global pandemic didn't happen, where the pause happened, Steven Stamkos wouldn't have played at all with his injury, and he apparently re-aggravated his hernia in that game when he played and scored that goal. But you know, the team definitely still played for him as the leader, and he was the first overall pick back in 2008. And I remember when he picked him. I mean, he's a heck of a talent, and would say he definitely has done enough to be another legend that will forever have his number retired in the Tampa Bay Lightning and possibly carve himself a Hall of Fame career. I know that going into the playoffs this year that he had some of a knock on him that he doesn't score big in Game 7s in the past. When Tampa Bay had those big years, teams that they couldn't quite get over the hump, and then last year when they got swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets. But it felt good to see Steven Stamkos because he's been a part of the Tampa Bay Lightning after the teardown from the 2004 team where Tampa Bay had to get the first overall pick, and then Victor Hedman, who ultimately won the Conn Smythe Trophy in 2009, or this year. He was drafted in 2000. Yeah, he was drafted in 2009, and definitely is a stud defenseman that if you can draft someone like him, you damn well want to keep him, because that's the only way you can get a defenseman like Victor Hedman, is either you draft him or you hope he becomes free agent and then you back up the Brinks truck. And he definitely has. He is like that Dan Boyle, and was huge. And they picked up Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point. Not in the first round if you look at how this team was built, but the players that definitely became role players. I mean, remember Kevin Shattenkirk, who's been a journeyman defenseman that I would say maybe he's slightly overrated, but he was bought out. He was just a spare part. Barclay Goodrow, I still think it was a little pricey. I mean, ultimately now San Jose, who traded Barclay Goodrow to Tampa Bay at the trade deadline for a first-round pick, will now be the 31st overall now that Tampa Bay has won the Stanley Cup. That it was a first-round pick, but they picked up a lot of those role players that Tampa Bay didn't have back last year when they got swept by Columbus, and it definitely was very symbolic that the first round after the round robin that the Tampa Bay Lightning drew the Columbus Blue Jackets, and maybe that was a character-building game. Where it was Game 1 in that first round. We're speaking of the Dallas Stars that they were playing the Calgary Flames. Well, given in the first round that game, the Tampa Bay Columbus game, started like 2.5 hours before the Calgary Flames Dallas Stars game, Game 1 in the round 1. That game was going overtime. Calgary and Dallas played their full game, while the Tampa Bay Columbus game were in intermission after playing their third overtime. And that game ultimately went to a fifth overtime that the Tampa Bay Lightning won. And was wow. I mean, that was one heck of a game. And then also being backstopped by Andrei Vasilevsky, because Tampa Bay also had Ben Bishop at one time, who has also been a German goalie that now fittingly he is on the Dallas Stars, but he didn't play a role in it because of his injuries, as well as Anton Khudobin, who led the Dallas Stars to the finals. And you could always say he'll now forever be a meme for the Dallas Stars when they went to the Stanley Cup final, and I guess the team have their chain thing that they pass around for their player of the game, and Anton Khudobin puts on the chain and he says in his Russian accent like, "We're not going home." And actually I saw another clip that, speaking of another thing that made the Tampa Bay Lightning a little easier to accept seeing win the Stanley Cup, is John Cooper, who is now currently the longest tenured coach in the NHL right now. And you had to wonder if Tampa Bay didn't go on to win the Stanley Cup, or let's say get out in the first round again this year, that he probably would have been going bye-bye, and there probably would have been major wholesale changes. But it was nice to see him finally get one. And he also had a joke. I think he was definitely, let's say, a few adult beverages after when the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup. It says, "We're going home 35 pounds heavier," meaning that the whole team is going home just 35 pounds heavier because they got this thing called the Stanley Cup. And I say it's the most impressive championship trophy in sports. And I just also thought of another player that Tampa Bay picked up, and who knows where he's going to go now, is Patrick Maroon, as he was on the St. Louis Blues team that won the Stanley Cup last year. He was another free agency. Picked up, it was later in the year and in the off season in the free agent frenzy that it felt like that if someone picked him up, he would have been overpaid. But it was another character player that the Tampa Bay Lightning picked up, and now the next thing we'll say, if he signs with whoever, either stays with Tampa Bay or goes with the free agent frenzy, is now going to say, well, now that team's going to win the Stanley Cup, right? That's just coincidental. But there was one former Flame that actually was on the Tampa Bay Lightning that also was nice to see get a Stanley Cup, was Curtis Mackley. Remember Curtis Mackley? I think we drafted him in the 6th round in 2002, and this is when I think the meme, it was a local meme here in Calgary that we called it McBackup, as Kipper was the top goalie, and we always kept saying to Kippersoft that we plan to play a little less so that you're not as burnt out when playoff time comes around. And then ultimately we had no faith in the backup, and then ultimately Kipper plays the whole time and keeps playing down the stretch so we can try to get in the playoffs. But when we've had McElhinney and we had McLennan, Noodles, which you see on TSN, and apparently I hear his nickname is Noodles because of when he was back riding buses in junior hockey, that he always liked those cup of soups and there's noodles. And then we had Joey McDonald, so that was the McBackup theme that was a local meme here. I remember Curtis Mackley when he was in Calgary that he looked like he could potentially be a great goalie, but then the other thing that always seemed to happen when Kipper was in net, and then when we had McBackup in, someone with a McName or Mac name that is in net, that our shots allowed per game goes up by 10. So the goalie that came in, who tries to give Kipper a night off, gets shellacked a lot more. I think maybe also the opposing team probably also plays just a little harder, knowing that, all right, we don't get to face Kipper, we get to face their backup goalie. That's probably the other reason why you see that. But it just ultimately, as a Calgary Flames fan, it was a lot easier to watch the Tampa Bay Lightning win the Stanley Cup this year than it was 16 years ago. For obvious reasons, but it was still nice to see all the playoffs get in, and the big number for the NHL was 0. There was no COVID cases at all during the whole time in the bubble, which it works, but definitely was a lot tougher for the players. I'm going to say even more so for the Dallas Stars, the fact that they've gone all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, and fortunately they are going home not 35 pounds heavier, because there's only one Stanley Cup, and the last I checked there's only one championship, there's only one team happy. But for all the players, all the coaches, all the trainers, everybody involved, and even the ice crew that you see in the games all masked up at the end of the ice there. I just have to say thanks for everything that you've done, and obviously spending time in the bubble, sacrificing time from your families and that, and so I can be entertained and still get some hockey. And as a Flames fan, at least I did have some hope that when they announced the 2014 playoff and that there were 24 teams going to the bubble, that hope was still alive for 24 teams. But ultimately there's only one cup, and Calgary did at least get past the Winnipeg Jets in the play-in series, and it does sting a little that it was ultimately the Dallas Stars that went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, that Calgary was literally 12 seconds away in Game 4, if you recall. We were up 2-1 in the series. We would have held on. We would have been up 3-1, and Dallas would have been frustrated. But that's the other thing I've noticed with Dallas, is that they definitely changed their mold of the game, because if you look at their stats, and when I previewed that series, Dallas looked like a team that was very stingy defensively. That doesn't score much, but as I saw in the playoffs, especially in the second round when they took on the Colorado Avalanche, I know they took advantage of a banged-up Colorado Avalanche team, because I felt that Colorado, ultimately my pick was I had Tampa Bay over Colorado for the Stanley Cup. However, I think if Colorado would have beaten the Dallas Stars in the second round, they probably would have went to the Stanley Cup Finals. You had the Vegas and Vancouver series, and I'm going to say Vegas got spoofed a little when Thatcher Demko definitely went on his goalie clinic in games 5, 6, and 7, where he only allowed 1 goal in 3 games. I think that snuffed out Vegas, where they eventually beat Vancouver, but they definitely got stymied by Dallas. But going back to the Dallas Stars, I mean, it was they found a way to play an offensive game when they need to, and Game 6 when they ultimately buried the Calgary Flames, they definitely starstruck the Calgary Flames, and it is what it is. I mean, there's a lot of what ifs when you look at any playoff run. I mean, Dallas definitely was close to being behind against Calgary. I guess you could say there was some solace that we could maybe play with the top teams in the league, but then Tampa Bay, I never felt Tampa Bay was ever in danger of missing the playoffs at all. I mean, they did lose Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, and that was it. But now Dallas was more rested as they were spending more time in the bubble as they eliminated Vegas. But that's what I say. I mean, I could say, not say begrudgingly, but I mean, congratulations to the Tampa Bay Lightning for winning Stanley Cup. It was nice to see them win it, not against the Calgary Flames, and how that team was built, and just put a cap on all the playoffs. And thanks for everyone that was able to participate in the bubble and provided some great hockey. And I guess the other last thing I was looking forward to was ultimately when the commissioner of the NHL, Gary Bettman, comes out to present the Conn Smythe Trophy and the Stanley Cup, as they piped in crowd noise for the games for the bubble hockey. I was wondering if the NHL was going to troll Gary Bettman just to pipe in booing, because that's what always traditionally happens, is that every time Gary Bettman comes out on ice, especially even more in a Canadian city, that he gets booed relentlessly, or he gets booed relentlessly, especially in hockey mad markets, when he goes to the podium to open the draft. The only time he gets cheered is when he goes to the podium and says, "We have a trade." Then people get excited at the draft. That's the only time I think Bettman gets cheered. But there was no booing. I think it was famous goal horns on here that they showed a clip of Gary Bettman talking his speech about the congratulating the team and how the playoffs went. That they put in booing sounds in there, but they didn't. And that was kind of missing. I think Bettman even tweeted out saying that he kind of missed that. I think the only times that I remember since he's been commissioner that when he hasn't been booed as much when he goes out on ice is, I don't think he was booed when he was out on the ice for the New York Rangers, because New York Rangers were excited that they finally won their Stanley Cup, first one in 54 years, and get rid of those 1940 chants. And I think in 2014 when the Los Angeles Kings won their second in 3 years, because that fan base was excited for winning their game in double overtime. Maybe Chicago in 2015, but I just know that he'll get booed relentlessly, and he will still get booed relentlessly if or when a Canadian team wins the Stanley Cup at home, and hopefully it's in front of the Sea Red. He'll still probably get booed relentlessly. Even, let's say, if we did win that cup in 2004 with however it was done, he would still have gotten booed relentlessly, even if he presented the Conn Smythe Trophy and the Stanley Cup to Jerome McGinley. What if? And I guess the other what if is that Tampa Bay Lightning, they still got Dave Mishkin, who he is their play-by-play guy, and let's say he needs some band-aids for your eardrums when you hear him. He scores, but I saw a clip that he seemed a little more mellow the second time when the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup. Probably because he's called the Stanley Cup before, and in 2004 was at home with fans while this was in the bubble. Of course, I still wonder to the day that how would Peter Maher would have called that goal. Let's say if Calgary won the Stanley Cup at home. Let's say that Jonas goal still didn't count, but Calgary did score that goal in overtime in the Sea Red. I wonder how Peter Maher would have called that goal. Oh man, what if? But that's all I gotta say about the Tampa Bay Lightning win the Stanley Cup. It was much easier to see him win the Stanley Cup now than 16 years ago, and it's nice to know that the playoffs and their season is finally done, and we're just waiting for whatever the 2020-21 season is going to be. So anyway, if you want to follow along this Calgary sports fans journey, home the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, but I also do personal vlogs and attempt to comedy, and I also do, share my experiences on the road or a sporting event. So if that all sounds like you'd be interested to watch, do follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey. You know what you need to do, just make sure you hit like and subscribe. That's what I meant to say. And I also have my other social media links down in the description below for other ways you can follow me. Find other tidbits on what I like to share, and maybe you can get some more updates on my channel, and maybe some of the stuff that I share on those other social media platforms will make it on a video in the future. So as I say here, I'll go Flames go. I mean, obviously I had to wear my 2004 era Calgary Flames jersey, and sadly this only says conference champions. And I did remember shortly after when we lost that Stanley Cup, I did see someone nearby a few times getting off the bus that he actually had this. This was a similar style that they had for the conference championship and the Stanley Cup Championship, the Stanley Cup champion hat. It had the wrong logo in my mind, and it had blue for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I did actually see someone a few times took a hat, and he actually had the Calgary logo on the hat. That obviously it said the 2004 Stanley Cup champions. So kudos to that guy. He knows what I mean, but it would have been a lot more work if you were to place the blue with the black, or maybe red text. I don't know. Maybe somewhere in Africa there's a hat that says that we won the Stanley Cup in 2004 and some t-shirts. Of course, if I ever go there to find them, I'll have to buy it and pretend what if. But so as I say, I'll see you in the next video.